My name is Aaron Callahan, and I'm 35 years old. For most of my life, I've been the family disappointment. While my older brother Derek sailed through Harvard Business School and landed a corner office at a Manhattan investment firm, I was bouncing between odd jobs in Queens, fixing computers for cash, and doing freelance web design from my studio apartment. Derek never let me forget it. Every Thanksgiving dinner, every Christmas gathering, every family barbecue in our parents' backyard in Westchester County, he'd find a way to remind everyone that I was the black sheep. "Aaron's still figuring things out," he'd say with that condescending smile, adjusting his Brooks Brothers tie. "Not everyone can handle the pressure of real business." Our mother, God bless her, would try to change the subject, but I could see the disappointment in her eyes too. Here was Derek, pulling in $275,000 a year, driving his BMW X3, living in his Brooklyn Heights apartment. And there was me, barely scraping together $2,200 for rent each month. If you enjoy stories of cold-blooded revenge and gripping plot twists, like this video and subscribe to the channel now. There are brand new unreleased stories here every day, each one more intense than the last. What Derek didn't know was that I'd been quietly building something. While he was busy playing the Wall Street hotshot, I was learning. Really learning. Every failed project taught me something new. Every late night coding in my cramped apartment was an investment in my future. By early 2021, I'd started a small tech company focused on cybersecurity solutions for mid-sized businesses. Nothing flashy, just solid, reliable software that companies actually needed. I kept my mouth shut about it. Let Derek have his moment in the spotlight while I worked in the shadows. The breakthrough came in mid-2022. A major data breach at a Fortune 500 company created massive demand for our services. Within 8 months, we'd signed contracts worth $12 million. By December of 2023, my company was valued at $38 million, and my personal net worth had crossed the $18 million mark. I still lived in the same Queens apartment, paying the same $2,200 in rent. Still drove my 10-year-old Honda Civic. Still let Derek treat me like the family failure at every gathering. Because I had learned something valuable over the years. Sometimes the best revenge is patience. The call came on a Tuesday morning in January 2024. My cousin Jennifer, Derek's ex-wife, was crying on the other end of the line. "Aaron, I need to tell you something," she said. "Derek hired a private investigator to dig up dirt on you. He's planning something for your mother's 70th birthday party next month." My blood ran cold, but I kept my voice steady. "What kind of dirt?" "Everything. Your old jobs, the times you were late on rent, that DUI from your college days. He wants to humiliate you in front of the whole family. He's been bragging about it, saying he's finally going to prove to everyone that you're a complete loser." I thanked Jennifer and hung up. Then I sat in my apartment for a long moment, processing what I just heard. My own brother was so threatened by the possibility of my success that he'd hired someone to investigate me. The cruelty was breathtaking, but it wasn't surprising. Derek had always been insecure beneath that polished exterior. In high school, he'd sabotaged my science fair project because he was afraid I might win. In college, he'd told our parents I was failing when I was actually on the dean's list. This was just the latest chapter in a lifelong campaign to keep me down. I spent the next week thinking about Jennifer's warning. Derek was planning to ambush me at Mom's birthday party, armed with a dossier of my failures. The old Aaron might have panicked, maybe even skipped the party altogether. But I wasn't that person anymore. Instead, I did what I'd learned to do best. I prepared. First, I called my accountant, Margaret Sullivan. "I need you to prepare a comprehensive financial summary," I told her. "Everything. Company valuation, personal assets, investment portfolio. Make it look professional but simple enough for laypeople to understand." "Planning to go public?" she asked. "Something like that." Next, I reached out to my lawyer, David Rodriguez, who'd handled our corporate contracts. "I need you to verify some information for me," I said, completely confidential. "Can you run a background check on Derek Michael Callahan? Date of birth, November 15th, 1985. David was quiet for a moment. "Aaron, that's your brother, right? Is everything okay?" Just being cautious. Family business. The results came back 3 days later, and they were more damning than I'd expected. Derek's financial house of cards was crumbling. His investment firm was under SEC investigation for questionable trading practices. He'd maxed out 4 credit cards, totaling $87,000 in debt. His Brooklyn Heights apartment. He was 3 months behind on the rent, owing $11,000. The BMW? Leased, and he'd missed 2 payments. But the real bombshell was buried on page 12 of the report. Derek had been embezzling money from client accounts to cover his personal expenses. Small amounts at first, but it had escalated. The total was approaching $640,000. I sat in my kitchen reading through the documents while sipping coffee from my favorite mug, a faded NASA logo I'd had since college. The irony wasn't lost on me. Derek was planning to expose my past failures while sitting on a present-day catastrophe that could land him in federal prison for up to 12 years. My phone buzzed. A text from Derek. Looking forward to Mom's party next week. Got a special surprise planned. Hope you're ready for some truth-telling, little brother. I stared at the message for a full minute, then typed back, "Can't wait, I love surprises." The private investigator Derek had hired was named Thomas Walsh, according to the paperwork David had uncovered. Walsh was a former NYPD detective who now ran a small agency out of Brooklyn. I decided to pay him a visit. His office was in a strip mall between a check-cashing place and a Chinese takeout restaurant. The waiting room smelled like old coffee and disappointment. Walsh himself was exactly what I'd expected. A tired-looking man in his 50s with nicotine-stained fingers and a discount suit from Men's Warehouse. "I'm Aaron Callahan," I said when his secretary showed me in. His face went pale. "Oh, Mr. Callahan, This is unusual." "I imagine it is." I sat down across from his cluttered desk without being invited. "I understand my brother hired you to investigate me." Walsh shifted uncomfortably. "I can't discuss ongoing cases with Mr. Walsh," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "I'm not here to interfere with your investigation. In fact, I'm here to make your job easier." I pulled out a manila envelope and placed it on his desk. "This contains everything you need to know about my current situation. Financial records, business documentation, tax returns for the last 5 years, all completely legitimate and verified." He opened the envelope with trembling fingers. As he scanned the first few pages, his eyebrows climbed higher and higher. "This says your company is worth $38 million. That's correct, and my personal net worth is just over $18 million. I assume this isn't what my brother was hoping you'd find." Walsh leaned back in his chair, processing the information. He was expecting, well, he was very specific about what he wanted me to look for. Failed businesses, unpaid debts, maybe some criminal activity. I'm sure he was. "Tell me, Mr. Walsh, what's your professional opinion about a client who hires you under false pretenses?" "False pretenses? Derek told you I was a deadbeat, didn't he? Someone with nothing to hide would have no reason to hire a private investigator. He fed you a story to justify this fishing expedition." Walsh nodded slowly. He did seem, unusually interested in finding negative information specifically. I stood up and straightened my jacket. "I'll leave those documents with you. Include them in your final report. Bill Derek for the extra research time. I'm sure he can afford it with his corner office and his fancy car." As I walked toward the door, I paused. "Oh, and Mr. Walsh? You might want to be careful about that final payment. Make sure the check clears before you hand over the report." The next week passed quickly. I went about my normal routine, but underneath the surface I was preparing for what would either be my vindication or my complete humiliation. I had backup plans for my backup plans. Mom's party was scheduled for Saturday afternoon, February 10th, at the Westchester Country Club, the same place where Derek had celebrated his Harvard graduation and his first big promotion. The irony was perfect. I arrived early, wearing a simple navy blazer and khakis. Nothing flashy, nothing that would suggest I was anything other than the struggling younger brother everyone expected. I helped Mom with the decorations and made small talk with relatives I hadn't seen in months. Derek arrived fashionably late, as always, making his entrance with theatrical precision. He was wearing a $3,000 Armani suit and a Tag Heuer watch that probably cost $8,000. His wife Sarah clung to his arm like a trophy, all fake smiles and Coach handbag. The country club's main dining room was packed with family and friends. Aunt Patricia had flown in from Phoenix, Uncle Robert drove up from Philadelphia, and there were cousins I hadn't seen since Mom's 65th. The atmosphere was warm and celebratory, exactly the way Mom would have wanted it. Derek worked the room like a politician, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries. I watched him from across the room, noting how his smile never quite reached his eyes. There was a tension in his shoulders, a forced quality to his laughter. He kept checking his iPhone and glancing in my direction. "Aaron, sweetheart," Mom said, appearing at my elbow with a glass of champagne. "You seem quiet today. Everything okay?" "Just enjoying the party, Mom. You look beautiful." And she did. 70 years old and still elegant in her pale blue dress, her silver hair perfectly styled. She deserved better than what was about to happen. "Your brother seems excited about something," she continued, following my gaze. "He mentioned he had a special toast prepared." "I'm sure he does." At exactly 3:30, Derek tapped his knife against his champagne glass. The room gradually quieted as conversations died down, and all eyes turned to him. He stood near the head table, his posture confident, his smile predatory. "Ladies and gentlemen, family and friends," he began, his voice carrying easily across the room. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate our wonderful mother's 70th birthday." Polite applause rippled through the crowd. Mom beamed from her seat at the center table. "Now, I know this is supposed to be about Mom," Derek continued, "but I hope you'll indulge me for a moment while I talk about family, about truth, about the importance of honesty in our relationships with each other." I felt my pulse quicken, but I kept my expression neutral. Several relatives glanced in my direction, sensing something was coming. "You see, I recently learned some things about my younger brother Aaron that I think you all should know." Derek's voice took on a sanctimonious tone. "Because family means being honest with each other, even when the truth is uncomfortable." The room had gone completely silent now. I could see confusion and concern on faces throughout the crowd. Mom's smile was fading. Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out a manila folder. I hired a private investigator to look into Aaron's background, and what I discovered was, well, let me just read from the report. He opened the folder with theatrical flair. "Aaron Callahan, age 35, has a history of unstable employment, including—" He paused, squinting at the page. "Wait, this can't be right." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the polished floor. "Is there a problem, Derek?" He flipped through several pages frantically, his confident demeanor cracking. This says you own a company worth $38 million. That's obviously wrong." "Actually," I said, walking toward the front of the room, "it's completely accurate." The murmur that went through the crowd was like the sound of distant thunder. Derek's face had gone ashen. "You see, Derek," I continued, my voice calm and clear, "when you hire a private investigator to dig up dirt on someone, you should probably make sure there's dirt to find first." I reached into my own jacket and pulled out the folder Margaret had prepared. "Since we're being honest with family today, let me share some truth of my own." Derek tried to speak, but no words came out. My company, Callahan Cybersecurity Solutions, was valued at $38 million as of last month. My personal net worth is $18.2 million. I own investment properties in Manhattan, though I prefer my modest apartment in Queens. I opened my folder and held up the first document. "Here are my tax returns for the past 5 years, if anyone's interested in verifying these claims." The silence in the room was deafening. I could see jaws dropping, eyes widening, people struggling to process what they were hearing. "But Derek," I said, turning to face my brother directly, "since you're so interested in family honesty, perhaps you'd like to share some truth of your own?" His face had gone from pale to gray. "Aaron, don't Don't what? Don't mention that you're under SEC investigation for securities fraud? Don't talk about the $640,000 you've embezzled from client accounts? Or should I skip the part about you being 3 months behind on your rent owing $11,000? Derek's knees buckled slightly. Sarah, his wife, stared at him in horror. The BMW you drove here today? You're 2 months behind on the lease payments. The tag Heuer on your wrist? Let me guess. It's either fake or bought with stolen client money. And that expensive Armani suit you're so proud of? According to my information, it's one of the last purchases you made before maxing out your 4th credit card. Uncle Robert stood up from his table. Derek, is this true? Derek looked around the room desperately, searching for support, for sympathy, for any way out of the trap he'd built for himself. He found none. He started, then stopped. His shoulders sagged in defeat. The funny thing is, I continued, I would have kept all of this private. I never wanted to embarrass you or hurt Mom's party. But you just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you? You had to try one more time to prove that I was the failure and you were the golden boy. Mom stood up from her chair, her face a mixture of disappointment and confusion. Derek Michael Callahan, she said, using his full name the way she had when we were children in trouble. Is what Aaron is saying true? Derek looked at our mother, then at me, then at the sea of faces staring at him in judgment. Finally, he nodded. Yes, he whispered. It's all true. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Sarah stormed out of the country club without saying another word to Derek, her heels clicking angrily across the marble floor. Several relatives followed her, whispering among themselves. Others simply stared at Derek with a mixture of pity and disgust. Derek stood there for what felt like an eternity, his tag Heuer catching the light from the crystal chandelier above. Finally, he looked at me with something I'd never seen before in his eyes. Defeat. How long have you known? He asked quietly. About your company? Your debts? The embezzlement? I shrugged. About a week. But I've known what kind of person you really are my entire life. He nodded slowly, like a man accepting his fate. What happens now? Now you face the consequences of your choices. The SEC investigation will run its course. Your clients will discover what you've done, and you'll have to figure out how to live with yourself. Derek gathered up his papers with shaking hands. As he walked past me toward the exit, he paused. I always thought I was protecting the family from you, he said. I thought you were going to embarrass us all. The only person who embarrassed this family today was you. After Derek left, the party continued, but the mood had shifted completely. Mom tried to put on a brave face, but I could see she was shaken. I spent the next hour making rounds, talking to relatives, assuring them that despite the drama, we were still family. Uncle Robert pulled me aside near the bar. Aaron, I owe you an apology. We all do. Derek had us convinced that you were... He trailed off, shaking his head. It's okay, Uncle Robert. Derek can be very persuasive when he wants to be. $18 million, he said, whistling low. And you never said a word. Success speaks for itself. It doesn't need an announcement. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, I found myself alone with Mom on the country club's terrace. The sun was setting over the Westchester Hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. I'm sorry about today, Mom. I know this wasn't how you wanted your 70th birthday to go. She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the golf course. You know, when you were little, you used to build these elaborate structures with your Legos. Derek would knock them down, and you'd just quietly start building again. Every time. I remember. I should have stopped him. I should have seen what he was doing to you, what it was doing to him. I enabled his cruelty because I thought it was normal sibling rivalry. You couldn't have known how far he'd take it, couldn't I? She turned to look at me, her eyes sad but clear. I saw you shrinking away from family gatherings. I watched you stop sharing good news. I noticed how you changed the subject whenever Derek started bragging about his success. But I told myself it was just his way of motivating you. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees around us. Mom, none of this is your fault. Isn't it? I raised two sons, but only one of them learned how to be a decent human being. Derek's problems aren't just financial, Aaron. They're moral. And somewhere along the way, I failed to teach him the difference between confidence and cruelty. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the last golfers finish their rounds in the fading light. "Tell me about your company," she said eventually. "I want to hear everything." So I did. I told her about the late nights in my apartment, learning to code, about the first small contracts that barely covered my rent, about the breakthrough in 2022 that changed everything, about the 28 employees who depended on me now, the Fortune 500 clients who trusted us with their most sensitive data. "I'm proud of you," she said when I finished. "Not because of the money, but because of how you handled today. You could have destroyed Derek completely, but you showed restraint." "He destroyed himself, Mom. I just refuse to be collateral damage anymore." 6 weeks later, in March 2024, Derek's investment firm was shut down by federal regulators. He was arrested on charges of securities fraud and embezzlement. The story made the business section of the New York Times, though thankfully it was buried on page 7. I visited him once in the Manhattan detention complex before his bail hearing. He looked smaller somehow, diminished in his orange jumpsuit. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that might have been remorse. "Why did you come?" he asked through the reinforced glass. "Because despite everything, you're still my brother. I tried to ruin your life." "No, Derek. You tried to ruin my reputation. My life was never in your hands to ruin." He was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison and ordered to pay full restitution to his victims. His lawyer worked out a plea deal that kept him from serving the full 10-year maximum he was facing. Sarah divorced him while he was awaiting sentencing in the fall of 2024. She moved out of the Brooklyn Heights apartment, which reverted to Derek's name on the lease. The BMW was repossessed in July. As for me, my company continued to grow throughout 2024 and into 2025. We expanded into AI-powered threat detection and landed several government contracts. By this summer, we were valued at over $55 million. But the real victory wasn't financial. It was walking into family gatherings with my head held high. It was having genuine conversations with relatives who finally saw me as I truly was. It was earning my mother's respect not through wealth, but through character. Derek was released early for good behavior in August 2025, after serving 2.5 years. When I saw him at a family barbecue last month, he'd lost weight and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before prison. But he seemed calmer somehow, more at peace with himself. "I'm starting over," he told me. "Real job. Honest work. Sarah's given me a second chance, believe it or not. We're going to counseling." "I'm glad," I said, and I meant it. "I spent my whole life trying to prove I was better than you," he admitted. "Turns out the only person I needed to be better than was myself." Looking back, I realized that Derek's attempt to humiliate me was the best thing that ever happened to our relationship. It forced us both to confront the truth about who we really were. He learned that success built on lies and cruelty is no success at all, and I learned that the best revenge isn't destruction. It's simply refusing to be destroyed. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let someone's actions speak for themselves. The truth has a way of rising to the surface, no matter how deep you try to bury it. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.